And it is that immigrant history that we can never forget. And it is that immigrant history that defines our nation and adds to our diversity and our strength. You know, when I was growing up, my parents worked 7 days a week, 365 days a year in a mom-and-pop grocery store. They denied themselves even some of the smallest personal luxuries just to make sure that their children could have a better life. And they sacrificed so much for us. I think that's really true for so many immigrant families, and especially for the Chinese in America. You know, back in 1997, shortly after I was governor, we went on our first trade mission to Japan and China. At the very end of that trip, all my family members, my brothers and sisters, mom and dad met us in Hong Kong, and the very next morning we went to the Star Ferry terminal and took the hydrofoil from Hong Kong, past Macau, up the Pearl River to Taisan to visit the family village. My mom and dad had not been back in more than 50 years since their wedding. And we went back to that family village. It was like stepping back into the 1800s. The family village is about a half a mile from a big city of about 2 million people. And we crossed the rice paddies, the roads over the rice paddies, and saw the water buffalo. And went into the family village of about 150 people. And it was like stepping back into the 1800s. Very meager electricity, water from a well in the middle of the town, and no toilets. It reminded me and impressed upon me that my success and the success of my brothers and sisters in America, and even the success of my mom and dad, were made possible by the contributions of the entire family village and the Locke clan. So, we really, during this month, are reminded of just how much those who came before us have sacrificed for us, and how much we owe it to them to never forget just where we came from. So I'd like to spend just a few minutes talking about what it means to me to be a Chinese American in 2011 and my hopes for the future of our community. I guess the place to start is that it sure feels a whole lot different being a Chinese American today than it did when I was growing up. You know, in the Ozzie and Harriet era in which I was born, I got the message that I had to choose between being Chinese and American. And during the 1950s, when I was in grade school, I vividly remember my third grade teacher, Mrs. Casey, who believed it was her duty to literally beat the native culture out of her immigrant students. Most mornings she'd ask us what we had for breakfast. You know, the Asian kids would go around, and the Japanese, Filipino, and Chinese kids would tell the teacher what we had for breakfast. And for me, it was oftentimes rice porridge with fish and vegetables that our mom cooked. You know, juk, chiffon. And Italian kids would talk about the little sips of coffee they would have with their breakfasts. So the teacher would proceed to slap us on the wrist with a ruler. To her, being American meant rejecting the culture of our parents and grandparents. And in this case, that meant we had to choose between bacon and eggs over juk. And the real tragedy was that many of us young, impressionable Asian Americans believed her. And we were convinced that to be American, to fit in, meant that your mother was supposed to look like Donna Reed, who baked apple pies wearing high heels and dresses and a pearl necklace. You know, to be American, we had to rid ourselves of our parents' cultures of which our parents were justifiably proud. And while our teachers tried to Americanize us, my parents tried to pull me in the opposite direction. They didn't want us kids hanging out with our classmates after school or playing sports or even participating in extracurricular activities. They wanted us home studying. And if we weren't home studying, we were supposed to be working in the grocery store. And so that was the constant tension of my youth. And I'm deeply grateful for my parents for forgiving all of the ways in which I and my brothers and sisters tried to reject them and our cultural heritage and our roots. And I know that I caused them a lot of pain and grief when I was growing up. But it really took almost the civil rights movement to teach me that I could be both Chinese and American. that in fact I am Chinese American. I could be myself, and I could be just as loyal and patriotic as anyone else and still eat with chopsticks. And of course, as I changed on the inside, America was changing all around me. The strength of our nation has always come from the diversity of our people, our culture, our religions, our customs, our languages. But it's only recently that we've begun to fully embrace that idea, that there really doesn't have to be tension between our ethnic heritage and our national heritage. We can celebrate Asian American or Black History Month. The Irish can proudly wave their flags on St. Patrick's Day, or the Italians can do the same on Columbus Day. But what holds us together is our love for America and our appreciation of the mainstream American values that have a lot more in common with what my parents taught me than I ever would have imagined when I was growing up. The values that reject extremism and division and embrace fairness and moral progress. The values of building bridges and working across lines of race and nationality to keep alive the American promise of freedom and equality. The values of hard work, hope, and opportunity. These are the values that have been embraced by the Committee of 100. And these are the values that have enabled all of us to achieve the type of success that would justifiably make our ancestors proud. In doing so, we've become part of a multi-millennial history of Chinese accomplishment. We can thank the ancient Chinese for countless inventions and innovations, including the abacus, the seismograph, silk, cast iron, the compass, the clock, paper, the printing press, acupuncture, and herbal medicine. Innovations, inventions, contributions by the ancient Chinese to world civilization. And today, we can see the indelible impact of Chinese Americans through the soaring and thought-provoking architecture of I. M. Pei and Maya Lin, the life-saving AIDS treatments of Dr. David Ho, the life-changing technology innovations of Jerry Yang, the athleticism and grace of Michelle Kwan, and the spellbinding music of Yo-Yo Ma. You know, later today I'm going to have a chance to, I'm looking forward to visiting the Museum of Chinese in America in New York's Chinatown, where the amazing contributions of our people in America are chronicled. The people in this room and throughout the Chinese American community impact virtually every corner of American life, from business and the arts to media and academia. And Chinese Americans have attained the very highest positions in all of those fields. And overall, we have an outsized impact that often greatly exceeds our numbers. But that has not yet extended to politics and to government. Of course, there are exceptions, and I'm proud to say that President Obama in particular has appointed 3 Asian Americans to his cabinet. And there are many, many others, Asian Americans, in senior positions throughout his administration. President Obama has made unparalleled efforts to include our community in government. In fact, there are so many Asian Americans in the Obama administration that we're often confused for each other. You know, and I have to tell you, I'm so often called General Shinseki, you know? And so many people go up to General Shinseki, who's the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, and say, "You're doing a great job in promoting exports around the world, General. Keep up the good work." And even Secretary Stephen Chu, Secretary of Energy, gets General Shinseki and myself confused. But in state houses across America, in Congress, and in other areas of government leadership, Asian Americans and Chinese Americans remain seriously underrepresented. Consider the fact that although U.S. residents of Asian descent make up 5.6% of the population, they only account for 2% of the U.S. Congress. It's a similar story with Chinese Americans. There are some 3.8 million Chinese Americans in the United States, but there are only 3 in the United States Congress. And here in New York, with over 530,000 Chinese Americans, there is but 1 Chinese American